right, so we're going to go through a roadmap to leveling up. We're going to go through some tabletop incident response overview. This is going to be just some basic level set of the incident response framework for those that are newer or aren't even in cybersecurity. We'll go through some playbook concepts, and then we'll go through the gamification. We have a little mini demo. We'll go through some tabletops and try to get some audience participation. I believe people can chat back with us or throw them in the questions. We'll figure that out when we get there. If not, it will be Amanda, making the decisions here.
So yeah, we're going to do just a quick overview of incident response. I didn't get a chance to jump in here earlier to see if there's been a whole lot of talks about incident response yet, but there are people that cover it way better than we do, because incident response could be, an entire week's worth of training if you really, really want to get into it. But we're just going to cover kind of the basics. NIST has the incident response framework. What we try and do is when we create tabletops and tabletop exercises and playbooks is do as best of a job as we can to tie it back to this framework. Frameworks are for a reason, and you need to be able to test out each section of that, right, with a playbook and with a tabletop. So things like preparation. We'll add things in tabletops like, if you have the right contact information, or do you have the right documentation around the call chain? Do you have, maybe your incident reporting mechanism is down, like all of that kind of stuff that references the preparation prior to any kind of incident. Those are the things that I think a lot of people tend to kind of gloss over, because if you haven't had an incident that impacts a certain part of the business, maybe you don't think that you need those things. So we find that a lot of walkthroughs on this kind of stuff makes people realize that they don't have processes and procedures or anything around that phase of the IR framework. Second is detection and analysis. We'll go a little bit more into that later on this hour. And it's what I enjoy doing is the detection part. I mean, the last talk I caught the tail end of. He was talking a whole lot about detections around the Azure tokens and stuff, which that is fantastic. So I like that. I like that portion. But those are things that also need tested out and made sure that you can detect on the things that are very important to you, and you know what they mean when you do detect them. So we'll go over some examples of those kind of playbooks and what we recommend that you do to kind of at least initially start those kind of playbooks. And then the fun part usually of IR tabletops is the containment, eradication, and recovery. Especially when we talk about the gamification of it, it can get real crazy real fast if you just keep on failing your actions on trying to identify a device to get it off the network, right? So I've been in IR situations where people can't necessarily find the endpoint that's causing issues. So we tend to bring in some real life scenarios, right, when we're doing those kind of tabletop things, which we definitely recommend everyone does, right? You can pull in any IR that you've seen or that has been in the news or whatever, and use that internally. And usually the bulk of the information that comes through those is in this stage. And then we'll go through tying stuff to the post-incident activity. So just like you would do in a regular IR, you would follow up, you would, come out with action items on how to make things better. You do the same thing in tabletops and playbooks when you go through them. There should always be a iteration, every single time you go through these things to make it better, whether it's a real incident or not. You're just going to continue. It's a process, right? It's not, if this stuff was easy to fix, we all be out of jobs. So we try and tie all of this into the different scenarios and different steps in the scenarios, and kind of map it out. And it kind of gives this holistic picture of what you could do with playbooks and tabletops.
So we want to make sure that again, when we're going through these tabletops, tying our incident response framework to these, getting into that, as Amanda said, that iterative process to keep going through and always tying what you're doing and breaking up your steps, and it kind of becomes second nature, because when you're in that crazy incident response scenario in real life, you kind of want to just kind of go through like kind of second nature here. So going through what is a tabletop exercise. Some people are very familiar with tabletop exercises. A lot of people that we work with have never really participated, or they may have heard of a tabletop exercise but have not participated and many have not run a tabletop exercise. Full tabletop exercises, or what you would consider just a tabletop exercise, is a very long process. We recommend doing like a smaller 1 hour, kind of 45-minute tabletop process. We call it, kind of like a tabletop in a box kind of thing. So we want discussion-based sessions, right, where everything can be informal, kind of more of a classroom setting. And we want to discuss like what happens during an emergency for a specific situation. Tabletops can be non-cyber related. They could be just really anything you want to better a process with. A lot of law enforcement, military conduct tabletop exercises historically, but you could do it really for anything, even just a business process that you want to see if it will break down at some point. So we try to always have just this definition so everyone kind of remembers that we're really just trying to get everyone together, have discussion, have communication, and figure out what we're supposed to do during a specific situation. So we have some goals and objectives here. So as much as we're taught not to just read out slides and read the specific words out, we do want to read out the scenario loud and clear, and that just kind of gets everyone in the zone there. And you want to break it into meaningful learning points. A lot of scenarios there's a lot of stuff going on. You want to break it down to what you want to focus on. Even though in a real situation there could be 6 different things going on, you want to break it down so you really have a meaningful discussion and action items focused on a specific point. And that goes into having like what we recommend, a discussion page. That will facilitate the conversation, help kind of move things around. We recommend putting those items in the categories of your incident response framework. It helps people understand really what is detection analysis versus containment and eradication. What's the difference? Where does recovery play in? And there could be a lot of interesting discussions to get everyone very familiar with how all those processes and where they're categorized at. So again, as we said, the overall kind of mission statement, if you will, of a tabletop exercise, the objective is, again, just to have a productive, engaging conversation. We have some do's and don'ts. You want to have one person facilitate. You don't want to have multiple people facilitating. You want to hopefully rotate that person in. It's kind of an interesting role to play. You do want to make sure that at some point in time, other business units are involved. You want to expand your tabletop. You might not do it right away, but you want to maybe start with your internal team, maybe get some other people within the technology division, and then branch it out from there. And sometimes the participants don't have to be actively engaged. They might just be listening on. In how are things working? Maybe you tailor that specific tabletop more if you start to include legal or HR to something that kind of happens where they're included. And that's why you want to break them up into smaller learning points or smaller sessions instead of having someone sit there and listen for 4 hours and kind of glaze over. You need somebody to keep track, so kind of like keep track of the discussion, what's going on. So again, just a recommendation from us. And then there's the don'ts. You don't want to stray from the scope. A lot of people will start to play the what if game. They'll start to say, well, this could happen, this would never happen, and you just want to stay away from that and really focus on that. You never want to forget to complete your, after action report. That's what an AAR is, and that's what we were talking about for the post incident report. And we have some recommendations of what that looks like. I don't think we're going to go too far into them today, but we do have them available on our GitHub, which we'll share. And you really just want to make sure that's consistent. Use ours as a template. Really just about just getting it down on paper and making sure that you're following up with things and that there's some action items and there's some, somewhat management behind the whole process there. And then just don't be that person, right? That just really, really, difficult and matter of fact person. I don't know if Amanda has any examples of those people. She seems to run into them a lot. I don't know
Yeah.
what's up with that.
I don't know. It's our industry. Yeah, you don't want to be a lot of people call it devil's advocate, right? You don't want to do that to the point where it's causing disruption of the entire process. There's usually varying levels of, technological knowledge in all of these. And the idea is it's not just for documentation, but it's a learning process also. So you never know what's going to happen, right? You can't come and be just this contrarian, like, oh, well, that'll never happen to me. We get a lot of questions too of what happens when you do run into those people in your tabletops. And the best thing to kind of start out with seems to work well that I've seen is start out with your own stuff. So target yourself first. And be a good example. So, whatever the first, say you run the email server, or say you're part of compliance, go that route first. If you know somebody is going to be kind of that aggressive, always right person, because it can really help to kind of show, well, yeah, no, I don't think this could go wrong, but let's see what we do if it does. So that's a fairly common thing that tends to happen.
Yep. And another thing that I've done in some places that really haven't done a lot of tabletops or have some good processes around things is just really start with communication. So literally have the tabletop focus on just communication, knowing who to contact when, system owners, business owners, when you have to do emergency patching, and really just leave it at that. Not even the actual technical incident at all. It's just about communication. Or just inventory management, as we were talking about earlier when Amanda mentioned a lot of people don't know where some of the assets are, and it's always those assets that might have an issue. But just some lessons learned there for us. So we're going to tie this into playbooks. We're going to kind of go right from the basic incident response, really quick overview of incident or tabletops, and then going into playbooks, tying them together, and then really get into that gamification. So we really have to fly through some of this stuff. So kind of going through how many people, and I know we can't really interact too much, but maybe some thumbs up, thumbs up. How many people know exactly what that's doing there? It is a Splunk query.
I mean, I used to write Splunk queries, and I'd have to see the data.
I mean, it looks pretty. It looks pretty clear to me. I mean,
yes, yeah, for sure.
So, just like into the matrix with the queries, and so going on to what about that? Maybe a little more readable, maybe not. I don't know. This is a KQL query here. I don't know. Seem like you know what's going on, Amanda?
I mean, I could figure it out eventually. A lot
Of
of
course you
JSON
could. Of
parsing.
course you could. Well, they
Like
don't make any
there's like a
sense.
JSON parse and a JSON parse and a JSON parse, so there's definitely really, really gross data and whatever that was looking at.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so again, going through, we're doing a lot of queries. We're doing a lot of query runs, going through, connecting all the datas. Maybe disparate systems have all their own syntax and language. Some things might be doing their own. You might have Splunk. You might have, Azure Sentinel, you might have HP ArcSight, you might have Blumira, you might have, 6 different tools. You might just be parsing Windows event logs, manually. Um, so really going into what is a playbook, right? So, just at the high level, trying to have some workflows on things. I know we just showed you some technical queries here, and now there's a flow chart in front of you, but really just trying to flow chart from a process perspective what goes on. This is obviously a very, very basic, response to the phishing playbook, right? But think about all your other. We talked. The last speaker was talking about, token theft within Azure and all that stuff happening and all kinds of things. What's your playbook around that? There's a lot of stuff that can happen. What's your basic stuff going on? Where are the decision points? This will not only help management understand kind of what's going on or that something's going on other than just a bunch of queries running around, but also will give new employees and potentially other staff some type of understanding of what's going on. And you're not going to build out the playbook probably for every possible scenario. You might have a generalized playbook that's just a basic. This is kind of our catch-all, what we do to investigate, and it will help out. When you get deeper though into a playbook past the workflow, you'll get into something a little bit more, a little more documentation here. And it doesn't mean that you need to have 100 or 50-page SOP, standard operating procedure on every possible security scenario, but you might want to have something, right? So you might have there you see there's a whole thing on the top there that kind of says it's an IDS, HF. Some places use high fidelity to know that this is like definitely when this kicks off or this runs, it is, very, very high fidelity. And then it kind of has this is a malware bot C2. And you can kind of just, even within the title, know what's going on there. There's a versioning numbers there that probably means something, depending on how large your enterprise is. But even from the smallest perspective, this might be helpful. Knowing that there's an objective statement there, just a simple sentence is what's going on. And then that working string, where that's the, either some type of pseudocode or maybe the actual script or queries in there. Like we saw that Splunk query and we saw the Azure Sentinel query there. And then what's the action, right? That might link to other documentation. It might have some information there. And then, how do you analyze it and some guidelines there? Not going to go through it all. And then some reference information. This is obviously an example of Cisco back in the day, way, way back in the day, but it's still a good example of just some basic documentation on a playbook, on more of a technical playbook on what's going on. Now, when you go to response playbooks, they'll get a lot bigger, more into communication again, preparation, communication, and how you containment. What's your containment tooling? You might have endpoint technology, you might have network quarantine capabilities, you might have a specific VLAN. All those things, it's good to have a containment playbook and kind of what your capabilities ultimately are. A really good book out there is Security Operation Playbooks. It's Jeff Bollinger, so kind of a shout out. Really good book there to kind of go through where there's no one way to do a specific playbook methodology, but there's techniques for it. So good thing to kind of research. I know Microsoft has some playbooks out there. They've been getting a little bit better on their recommendations, especially in their secret decoder ring of what's logged or not logged. So that's really fun to understand. And then there are more detailed ones. I'll let Amanda kind of go into this masterpiece here.
Yeah, so this is another tool that you could use for at least your decision trees around troubleshooting certain issues. We use a tool sometimes called Xmind to at least create the skeleton of the beginnings of a playbook. It gives you the ability to kind of copy and paste and move things around, and just like a mind map related format. So you just like with the last two, it depends on your organization. It depends on what you're using it for, how detailed you want to be, if it's going to be just a SOC playbook or if it's going to be an entire incident. It really just depends. There's just a lot of different options out there for you. I put the links to Jeff's slides and his book in Discord, and I'll keep pasting stuff in there too from our different slides. And then another thing that I know colleagues of mine have been looking into recently and is very interesting is people have started to use different AI related tools, so like ChatGPT, Bard, whatever, to help out with incidents. So it's very interesting to see kind of where that's going, and what information you can kind of feed those and get recommendations back on. So that's kind of a interestingly slippery slope.
Oh, man, we went
um,
25 minutes until AI, ChatGPT was mentioned. Mm,
yeah, drink.
yeah.
That's the new cyber, I think.
So going through the tabletop playbook use case example. So we have our tabletops and we have our playbooks, and putting them together is really kind of the roadmap of leveling up at least level 1 to level 2 on you know really trying to maintain your playbooks, but also enhance your playbooks. And so, once you start kind of either using your tabletops to build out maybe some of your playbooks, or you already have some playbooks and documentation and you want to enhance that, that's when you start tying them together. So we have, again, this is a business email compromise tabletop. Kind of read it out real quick here. So Cody receives an email directing him to update his password, and Mash Incorporated, financial service website. So yeah, basic thing. And click an email, he enters credentials, update the password, everything seems fine. Then all of a sudden, there was a large authorization executed under his account, he had no recollection of. So that's kind of scary. Turns out, again, go figure, the link directed him to an evil twin website. Malicious actor was able to compromise credentials, again, resulting in some type of authorization charge. Right. So basic business email compromise. This is already, certain either detections or, awareness is kind of controls have degraded or failed. So what do you do now? So, again, everyone could shout out a bunch of stuff, and I can hear all of the responses in the ether of Zoom, just screaming at it's like when you see the person behind them in a movie, so you could do that. Even if you're in a small team, you could get all kinds of things you want to respond with. That's where this discussion page comes into play, and that's where you want to say, hey, we don't have a playbook for this. Let's just do some discussion on this. What tools do we even have, right, to prevent all of this, right? We go through, the vendor, does what you have already have additional controls that are in place, right?
Maybe you have something that you're paying for, which is pretty common, that doesn't have this configured.
Right.
A lot of times there's just like a lot of tool overlap, because you might not know that a software updated or added a new feature, and you can always go back and look at that stuff.
Right. So again, this might seem real basic questions, especially in a large enterprise, but then you'll get the reverse in a large enterprise. You might have 6 or 7 different tools that are competing with each other, that are, going all over the place, and it's hard for you to really do any analysis. You have a third party ripping emails out for this, but then another one that's, allow listing things, and then they're all kind of, fighting with each other. So those are things that snap out. Even a large organization can have some benefit in going through some of these. And we try to go through and have something through all of the, common attack vectors, right? So you have BC, will, have a ransomware one, and then you can get more advanced, as well. Something like, a rogue Azure application or some type of, credential, um, theft and things like that. So you want to go through and talk through these things, right? Do you provide any awareness training? Maybe it's not getting maybe it's just standard training across the board, and you need to maybe focus some additional training for those that have access to authorized large transactions. Again, a small additional step to a small set, hopefully small set of people that can increase your security posture. You go into obviously the multi-factor authentications, and again, more and more things. The last one's kind of my thing. I do have, how do you prevent or detect evil twin websites, right? And as developers, right, can you get your development more involved to put some tokens or some things in on your website? So if they're copied around, right, there's some interesting, I know, web canary like web tokens you can kind of put in your websites, and if things are copying your websites, trying to scrape them out using something like the social engineering toolkit or an equivalent, you can kind of get some type of alert when it pops back up somewhere else. I've seen organizations do this, and they do get awareness of an attack that's staging themselves before they're fully built, and that's pretty cool to see an organization that has some of those detection capabilities that are very simple, and they actually detect a staged attack before it even happens. That's pretty cool stuff. That kind of gets me all warm and fuzzy. So kind of going through again, we got the tabletops, we got the instant response framework, and we got playbooks, right? We put them all together, times it with some gamification, and we have like all the power, like over 9,000 power. So that's what we're going to get into now. So this is everything that's led us up to this. With this, we've been training for this right here. So we have a cyber game master bot overview. This is just an example of how you can do some gamification. Black Hills has their backdoors and breaches. You can incorporate that into your day in, day out tabletops. You can also start to make your own, get some dice, and start put a little bit of gamification in it. Just the most simple gamification can help go a long way. Get those people that either are really difficult to work with or always the matter of fact individuals, and get them a little bit engaged, and just it's the dice's role that's deciding, but also get those people engaged that usually may not be as interested. So we have this is a screenshot here of our cyber game bot, right? So we're rolling some things, going through. You have successes and you have failures. So we'll get through into like, how does that work? This is how you can gamify. You can take any one of those tabletops, go through, and in those discussion points, if you have something that someone wants to do or think they already have, or you want to develop, we have the under 10, again, roll for damage. The action fails. I know in some of our tabletops, we actually give people literally like cyber life points. So you can kind of go through and kind of make it a little more competitive there. 11 to 20, the action is a success. So again, just kind of, half and half. And again, using a 20-sided dice, if you're unfamiliar, they do exist. They're used for a lot of tabletop role-playing games. So definitely, I think Amanda has one right there. Always at her side, never leaves. Maybe.
I have a couple different things. I have like you can never like not have these at your desk, right? Because I have like this little one,
There
but
you
then I
go.
also have a pass fail, and it's kind of
There you
like
go.
they're like attribution dice, but still
There you go.
you
Zero
can use
day.
it.
Yeah, so you can again, a lot of ways to provide just a slight gamification. Again, if you roll a one, usually it's a critical fail. You can incorporate that into the tabletop. Usually something really bad would happen. Think about if
Speaking
an engine.
of
Yeah.
speaking of critical fails, there's great throwback in Discord to one of our trainings where there were 4 fails in a row, 3 of them being ones.
Yes. Yes, we did
Uh,
have.
Yeah.
Did have three ones in a row, which was pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
You hope that that never happens like in real life.
But
That would
sometimes you just
just
have a bad
be,
day.
yeah, right.
So think about an engineer normally just doing their thing, and again, mistype a command, and all of a sudden BGP is running wild, and half the internet's down because that's never happened. Um, but 20 rolling a critical hit that will again kind of give a killing blow there. Unicorns will happen. You were on top of it, and you definitely made the day there for whatever action you were doing. Modifiers here, we have modifiers set up, and this encourages, again, documentation and training. So having slight modifiers, you could get really crazy with this. But then again, you'll probably be developing your own game, and you might want to put more of that effort into your cyber program. But definitely pretty interesting. There are a lot of other um, trainers out there that have some pretty unique setups and modifiers and how some of these can go through. I mean, Amanda are one of them. However, again, Backdoors and Breaches is a great resource. There are a few other cyber tabletop games. I know that FEMA or DHS just released one for state and local governments. It's kind of cool. Again, trying to get hip with the gamification. So check that out. Going on, this is some of our example actions. We allow kind of, we try to give everyone a base level of how to act. And this goes down kind of through, some of the incident response processes, right? Like you could always ask for additional information. We want to encourage people to always ask for more information. You might not have all the information, but you might be able to request it or see who might have it. So that's something we always encourage during our tabletops, especially our game. Um, again, detection of activity, basic stuff. Again, doing some type of containment and what that is. Obviously, going down the incident response framework, the recovery actions, and kind of going down to additional assistance. We want to also make people feel or get people a little bit out of their comfort zone with working with legal and management. So we really try to, in any of the tabletop, at some point, we try to get legal kind of incorporated there because it's an important part, especially with insurances, depending on any regulatory requirements. If your team and even outside your team understand that, you can do a lot of things during an incident or pre-incident to make sure that you're meeting those regulatory requirements, especially as they're changing, drastically, or know that there may be new regulatory requirements and how you respond to a certain incident. So people are checking and understanding that. And then, issue statement and PR. We always, in some of our longer tabletops, we try to get people to really actually put a statement, even if they're not PR, to get, at some point, we have to tell the public, and maybe you don't, depending on your, area of location or industry vertical. But you want to get comfortable. If that statement isn't to PR media, it might be to the executive or some type of internal briefing. And it's good to get people comfortable in issuing that and understanding, how those can be worded. So we have our gameplay tips here. We always try to get people to have our actions ready. And the game masters have final say. We usually do hand out special skills in some tabletops. Not going to get in those right now, so that's kind of a teaser. We do assign people titles during certain things. We're not going to do that in our demo here. But again, always try to use the incident response framework and take notes here. So we're going to kind of get into our first little gamified mini demo here. So, we'll try to either try to get the audience, through the chat, or Amanda's going to be our audience here.
I love audience participation.
So we have, Ada and AppDev. And Claus explained that the computer they use for dev testing for critical applications, the Whiz Bang 3000. This is an important application. All the money in the company is in this application. Has a splash page with a countdown timer, so that's not good. It was right after updating some patches for Mash Kitten on Rails because all of the cool kids are using it. And Ada attempted to reboot, but again, the screen doesn't go away. The computer, of course, isn't an asset on file. Ada's been doing all the dev work on a non-company, non-corporate assets, but it was directly connected to the endpoint VLAN. No version control, 6 months of code lost, and the final sprints next week. What is Ada gonna do? What do you?
Rewrite it all from memory.
So
There we go. Oh yeah,
we
number
have
three.
four options. We have number one, again, investigate more. Maybe you're asking somebody. Maybe you're reaching out to a third party. You're just like, I need to tell somebody now. Or you're gonna recode everything, or ask for an extension, or is there an other one? So what do we? We'll try this and see if we can get some. Um, let's see. There's some chats. There's a chat in here, right, somewhere,
So, sounds like an important life lesson learned by Ada.
right?
Yes. Get pushed daily.
Let's see.
Oh, option one, option one. All
Yeah.
right. I think it's nobody likes my recode everything. I don't
What
understand.
do you see in there? I don't see.
I see a lot of ones. There's like
See a
five
lot of
ones,
ones.
6 ones in a row.
Six ones in a row.
Nobody's gonna be a combo breaker.
Oh no. Okay. All
Oh
right.
yes, combo breaker. Let's see. Four, office space the computer. Just chuck it. Chuck it out the window.
Office space. Office space. Are you looking into Discord? Where are you looking at?
I am looking at Discord, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Well, Amanda, you get to pick one.
I guess we're gonna go with one. We're
You
gonna
gonna
go
go
with
with
one.
one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna escape out of the matrix here, and we're gonna go right into our Discord. This is just for show here, but Amanda will be rolling.
All
Let's see
right.
it. Everyone give their. Oh, she's typing. Ooh, 11. Good job. Look at that. Did you have a, hopefully you had your investigative playbook, so you got super points there.
Always.
All right, so we're gonna go back into that. Let's see. Well, you found nothing no matter what. That
No.
was a dead end. No more investigations.
No logging. No,
Yeah,
no logging was turned. I mean, it wasn't an
yeah,
asset. So
nope. Yeah,
somehow we
so
missed the agent.
yep. So that failed. What are you gonna do now?
Number three, I think.
Just recode everything? Ask for an extension? Is it three? I got some
Yes.
thumbs up here. Are you gonna go for
Yes.
it?
All right. So we're gonna try and recode everything and ask for an extension. Let's see here.
Oh,
Um,
you failed.
she actually farmed it
Ada
out
failed.
to a third party, and
All
she's
right.
got it.
Well,
She got the code on Fiverr.
un unfortunately, there was and that was your role for an additional workplace initiative. I should have let you know the values
Tornado.
and culture that you were working at. It was a pretty
Yeah.
cutthroat place. So let's see. Would you, um, well, the company goes under due to bad leadership, overcommitting the clients, but you find a happy company. Ada finds a happy company. Um, if you would have reached out to a third party or law enforcement, you would have noticed that there was a decryptor, um, but you didn't ask for a lifeline.
I should have communicated better with my team.
Yeah. So that's kind of like again a mini demo. We love doing these all day, every day because it's essentially um, tabletop RPGs with cyber in it. What's better than doing your cyber job than doing tabletop RPG dice rolls all day. So again, trying to reinforce that through that playbook creation. So we always want to kind of end with from a ransomware perspective, how do you build a playbook around that? Again, pretty, hopefully everyone on this webcast is here learning more and at least has some type of ransomware guidelines and plan out there. But that is important that, again, how do you validate certain things and packages before it? So this was kind of a ransomware through a supply chain or code build process. And you want to make sure you're not just using all these fancy, packages out there. You want to have some type of process. It is a give and take with the agility of all the DevOps stuff out there, but you also want to make sure that you're testing from secured machines. At least that's and also disclosing the incidents appropriately to third parties. Again, going through all this stuff, these are the questions. I'm not going to read them all out, but one thing to call out is, do you pay or not pay the ransom? I think I know what a lot of our suggestions would be, but you want to have some type of process documented and on file of what your decision is, because what you don't want to be in, you don't want to be in that situation where something like some type of code that ends up being really, really critical to a business application isn't there due to some type of ransom, and you saying that, well, we would never pay the ransom, and not having any designation on file or having any type of leadership, or if you are the leadership, having that already before you need to reiterate that, especially to legal. So definitely important to have that kind of on file. I know a lot of people out there that have opinions on ransomware stuff, have it documented somewhere, whatever your company's decision is. So that's kind of just a takeaway there.
Yeah, and you can't say that you for sure are never going to pay the ransom unless you're always acting alone. Sometimes you have a board to answer to. Sometimes you have stakeholder, like a whole bunch of different business level operations. Like, it would be nice to never pay the ransom, but it would be nice if we always had backups for everything. So poor Ada, maybe she pays the ransom out of her pocket.
Deep pockets there. So just wrapping up here, I know we have about 10 or so minutes, but we want to leave some questions. We went through the tabletop incident response overview. Again, we had to get that baseline about tabletops and incident response. We went through some playbook concepts. Again, this isn't a talk specifically on playbooks. There are a lot of good talks out there, especially probably at the Blue Team Summit for playbook creation. And then we wanted to really focus on gamification, kind of that mini demo on our game bots. Again, having those dice rolling, getting that a little bit out of your comfort zone, and having those quick tabletops. We did 2 tabletops in this hour. We went through real fast here, but again, you can have a lot of participation and a lot of progress made doing these smaller tabletops versus a 4-hour, 2 days or 2 weeks tabletop. I know Amanda's done some really, really large tabletops for some really large companies, and I think they spanned a whole week, 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, I don't think anyone should ever start out with those. Yeah, very scoped down. If you're doing your first tabletop, do it with just your group first. Um, maybe a couple key people. Really, the first couple meetings could be just coming up with those discussion points, right? Sometimes that takes a
Mm-hmm.
full hour to come up with a good set of discussion points. So there's a lot that goes into building these. Sometimes there is a question. So is there a repository of sample playbooks that can be used as starting place, especially ones that include sample detections and Sigma rule language?
The Microsoft ones are pretty good, especially if you have Microsoft. If you don't, then it's obviously not too useful. But again, I think some of the general methodologies are pretty good from a response to basically phishing or something like that, or count takeover. So you could still use those even if you're not, from a Microsoft perspective, you just want to be able to use the Microsoft components of it. But the basic, flow would be probably is pretty relevant to any account takeover in a directory system. The basic ones, which are just like workflows, is I believe it's literally called incidentresponse.com, incidentresponse.com, and there's like a slash playbooks. We have that link. We'll share it to you, share it with you. That's a good one. That one is like the hundredth degree of flows. I mean, they have everything during like a specific incident response. They have like your threat vulnerability manager to do all these actions and things. So it is built for a full-on program, but uh, you could kind of descope it down specifically. Now, tied to Sigma rules, that's great. I know that there are some, I would say, attack vectors that are tied to MITRE that then would have some Sigma rules. So if you were doing an account takeover and you wanted to tie that to, the MITRE for, initial compromise and go through that, you could probably map that out. I'm um, unaware of anything, and I'm sure there are a few things out there that kind of map that through to like a full playbook. But I know that um, there are a lot of stuff out there that we're finding all the time. So we can go through some of our documentation, see if anything that we currently have has been updated to include like Sigma rules or anything like that. Because that's a great question. That would uh, make a lot of lives easier. If anyone wants to start some type of open source, crowdsourced Sigma rule to MITRE to Playbook, hit me or Amanda up. Amanda's all on board. I can see there.
I
And we'll,
totally
we'll
have enough time.